You are listening to WTUZ Radio Podcast. All right, welcome to WTUZ Radio Podcast, and today's episode is the collapse of an empire. All right, so this is a follow-up from a little tidbit I did last week about what is going on in Atlanta with the amount of violence that's happening. And that violence is just a small portion of what is really going on, which is the collapse of an empire. All right. So this is really nothing new, but this is something that needs to be reiterated often. So as we are seeing the symptoms of a collapse, we keep reminding ourselves of what is really happening. Okay. So this particular podcast will discuss the collapse of an empire. All right. So we're going to go through how the infrastructure is collapsing, the economic collapse, which is leading to, of course, job losses, homelessness. Of course, we're going to talk about the violence associated with this as well. Okay. And then just the overall general social collapse. All right. So let's start with the basics. Let's start with the infrastructure. Okay. So America, and I'm going to focus on the Americas, although we could certainly use this around the world in particular, but I will focus for this podcast, for the sake of time, on the Americas, since the America is viewed as the world leading power. America is the Rome 2.0. All right. So there's plenty of information out there. This was from CNN from 2019. America's infrastructure is crumbling, and these people are suffering because of it. The fabric of America is crumbling. The American Society of Civil Engineers gives the nation's infrastructure a D+. That's the roads and the bridges we drive on every day, the airports we use for business and vacation travel, and the schools where we send our children to learn. And newer networks critical to modern life, like broadband internet, haven't even reached many areas yet. All right. So this article by CNN, they published it in 2019. Now, I know I keep bringing this up, but it is something that should be a huge awakening to us all, because that infrastructure piece that they didn't mention in this article, and one that is really, really precious, is the electrical grid. And as we just witnessed a couple of weeks ago, we literally had an electrical grid system collapse because of weather in Texas. Okay. And because of that failure of that electrical grid during an ice storm, I might add, okay, during an ice storm, people died. And not only did people die, you had additional damage to infrastructure and buildings, homes that will take additional funds to correct. All right. And in the process of that, folks were displaced from their homes. So you might as well add to this list of crumbling infrastructure is how the electrical grid is very, very vulnerable. Because without that electrical grid, you're not going to have broadband and internet anyway. All right, so President Donald Trump declared at his inauguration, we will build new roads and highways and bridges and airports and tunnels and railways all across our wonderful nation. Okay, so that happened when? When did that happen during his presidency? Okay. At least 7 times his White House has declared that the chosen theme of a week would be infrastructure. But each time the issue has become lost in other events, often generated by the president himself. Okay, so remember, I am reading from CNN, so y'all already know how that goes with the slant of hand with their opinion of Trump card. Although I'm not a supporter myself of any of them, but just wanting to point out the bias, because I can guarantee that Biden is not going to start up any infrastructure programs either, any major infrastructure programs. All right. Money, whether through taxes, tolls, or private investments, is the only way to fix the problem. The engineers group says 4.6 trillion. Let me say that again. 4.6 trillion is needed for improvements in the next decade. The Democrats said they and Trump had agreed on $2 trillion price tag for an infrastructure plan, which would only be a part of a national solution that could also include state, local, and private action, but precious little has been achieved. For Americans who have to use the aging, fragile structures every day, it is beyond time for investments and fixes. All right, now notice or take note of this 4.6 trillion. This was before the pandemic, and they had dedicated 2 trillion then. So because of the pandemic, that 2 trillion is out the door as well to fix, to do infrastructure projects. So here are some of the things that are being affected. Roads and bridges. Sylvia Campos loves her 2011 red Nissan Cube, but she says the roads in Michigan are testing its limits. Her car makes a rattling sound after she hit a pothole on one of Detroit's highways recently. It's not the first time. Campos says she also hit a pothole in the middle of a highway where traffic means you can't safely swerve to avoid them. One time she blew out her tires, she says. Every time I'm on the freeway, I'm scared, she tells CNN. But you can't do nothing about it because you've just got to take the hit. You can't go to the right or you can't get to the left because you're going to have an accident. It's terrible. They need to fix them. All right. So now those of you that live in the colder climates up north, we already know what the game is. As soon as stuff thaws out after that freeze and it warms up, that's when those potholes and stuff start developing, and they are pretty deadly. They are pretty deadly and can literally do a lot of damage to your car. Some places have decided to take action by themselves. Neighboring Ohio raised its gas tax to fund road fixes, the state's Department of Transportation says. The nation's roads got a D in the latest engineering report card. Michigan and New York were the worst, both getting a D minus. Okay, so next on the list are schools, sweating or freezing, Mark Mark D. Excuse me. Had to clear my throat there. Sorry about that. Mark DIT, 13, goes to school 5 times as old as he. Many of the fixtures at his school have not been replaced since they were new in 1954. There's been so much lead found in the water that several fountains are shut down, and students help flush the system by turning on all faucets throughout the school for 2 minutes every week. That's not the only problem with water. When it rains, the roof leaks. Sometimes there's water coming through the ceiling in vast quantities, he says. Usually there's a certain portion of the class that's like blocked off because of a leak or because of a ripped up floors. And he says the drastically different temperatures because of the old system make it hard to learn. Imagine trying to learn algebra or reading a book while you're sweating or you're freezing to death. All right, so I'm not going to go over the rest of that, the infrastructure, but the nation's schools by the American Engineer Society, they're giving the schools a D+. All right, now, just real quick on the schools, because I had to point this out to quite a bit of folks that live in the suburbs, and they live in either a middle class or upper middle class. And they do not see the connection between why their particular schools have certain things and certain programs and others don't. And what everybody seems to forget, at the end of the day, major funding for schools come through what? Property taxes. So meaning if the majority of the homeowners are in these middle to upper middle class areas and the values of the homes are a certain amount higher, that means the higher the property taxes will be, and a large portion of property tax go to schools, right? So it's no wonder that when you are looking at what they call inner city schools or rural schools or schools that are in poorer neighborhoods, the resources are slim to none, okay, or very, very limited because of that direct link of funding via property tax. Okay, so broadband internet, waiting. Amanda Pitchard runs a flower farm on the outskirts of Cleveland, Tennessee, about 30 miles from Chattanooga. She attracts customers online, but she often cannot see her own website. While she has municipal utilities for water, electricity, and so on, there is no internet service. The cell phone service is spotty, so even uploading something to social media can take 15 or 20 minutes, and the dream of uploading videos to show customers what's available or grow interest in the farm seems unattainable right now. We sometimes have to go into town with better internet service to even upload information on our website to reach our clients. It also impacts Amanda's husband, Bob, and their 3 children, who sometimes end up doing homework in their car in a parking lot in town to be able to get online. So they're saying 24 million Americans don't have broadband access, according to the Federal Communications Commission. All right. So, I mean, that one, it is what it is. And we all know what that is, that if it is not profitable for these internet companies to lay the particular cabling down to get service to these areas, they just simply will not do it. Next, airports. This should be self-explanatory for anyone that has done even just a little bit of travel. Okay. We know LAX. Oh my God, y'all. LAX is the straight up pits of hell. I mean, you could look at it and see that it looks from the 60s, looking like, an episode out of the Jetsons, with the way that the airport is shaped. And as long as I can remember, we're talking 20 years worth, it's always under construction. All right. That's including, so that's LA. I'll put that on New York's LaGuardia. That sucks also. Always under construction. Remember like my second time going to New York, and the doggone belt broke. The belt that carries the luggage around the corner, it straight up broke. And it was like the last flight in. So we're all like climbing on the belt to pull out our luggage. All right. So they're saying Deborah Flint, CEO of Los Angeles World Airport, wants Congress to allow airports to charge each passenger a little more to fix the problem. I don't think so, Miss Flint. That's you all's business. You better charge the airlines and keep it pushing. So LAX and other airports across the country have infrastructure that has or needed updating for the last 10, 20 years. And we're now in a position where we have to do them because our airports are failing. No crap, LAX. All right. And LA is going to show up in this particular podcast quite a few times. It's just a symptom of California in general, and LA is right on that list of grossly mismanagement, no planning, etc. All right, so back to what Deborah is saying. If the facilities have people waiting in long queues in line because, we don't have sufficient facilities for them to be processed, or we haven't been able to invest in technology that allows that experience to be faster, that does a disservice to all of us. No, Deborah, what does a disservice to all of us is you all have been allowing the airlines not to pay what they need to pay to support the infrastructure. So let's not sit here and pretend why these U.S. airports are dumps. Okay? Because the airlines are trying to keep their costs at a certain point. And you could do a little research because airlines are struggling to, in some cases, stay afloat. And as a matter of fact, during the pandemic, they were the ones that needed a bailout because their particular business model is a failure. So all of that expanding that particular airlines were doing, it was really for waste because their margins have gotten worse and worse. So meaning, although the passengers have increased, the number of passengers per year have increased, the price point that they're able to charge has decreased because of competition, and it's not making it up in volume. So what would have been the better business model, airlines? Would the better business model would have been perhaps to stick with keeping your prices higher, and those that can afford to fly, and therefore they have a pleasant experience, and then in the process, you're profitable? So I have no sympathy for airports because that costs of making sure that you stay modern should solely be on the airlines. And airlines should be taking that cost and passing it to the customers. And if the customers can't afford it, then that means they don't need to fly. Okay, so all around, it was a bad business model. Okay, so this lady from LAX is trying to charge people. Flint airport executives want the federal cap on the passenger facility charge to be raised from $4.50 a rate up to $8.50 per flight. Frankly, I don't think passengers would even necessarily know that they're paying for it, she said. That would be a no, ma'am. It does not matter whether passengers feel they need to pay for it. You all let that airport get in that particular shape. Okay. So those are some of the things that they're listing in this article on infrastructure. So we're going to move right on. Let's get into the bankruptcies that cities have faced over the last couple of years. Right. So this is America's largest cities are practically broke. This is out of Forbes magazine. 63 out of America's most popular 75 cities do not have enough money to pay all their bills. Chicago-based municipal finance watchdog Truth in Accounting revealed the stark news in its third annual financial state of the cities. According to TIA, that's Truth in Accounting, this means that to balance the budget, elected officials have not included the true cost of government in their budget calculations and have pushed cost onto future taxpayers. TIA divides the amount of money needed to pay bills by the number of city taxpayers to come up with what it calls taxpayer burden. Based on these accounting folks, Truth in Accounting grading methods or methodology, for the second year in a row, not a single one of the 75 cities received an A. Truth in Accounting, however, was unable to rank and grade two of the most populous cities, Newark and Jersey City in New Jersey, because unfortunately, they do not issue annual financial reports that follow generally accepted accounting principles. So here's their grading scale, the Truth in Accounting folks' grading scale. A is a taxpayer surplus greater than $10,000. And y'all, you know, that's pretty doggone sad. Now, let's think about how sad that is. Let's think about how sad that is, that that's considered an A. If they have $10,000 extra after paying all of its expenses. This is a major city, family. You would think that this $10,000 surplus is for a middle class family. Are you kidding me? So that's their A. B, taxpayer surplus between $100,000 and $10,000. They're saying 12 cities met that. So no cities met grade A, by the way. My bad. I forgot to say that. No cities got an A. Okay, so you had 12 cities that had between $100,000 and $10,000 left over after paying the bills. C, taxpayer burden between 0 and 4,900, 24 cities. D, taxpayer burden between 5 and 20,000, 31 cities. F, taxpayer burden greater than 20,000 cities. I'm sorry, $20,000. And that was 8 cities. The 75 most populous cities' total unfunded debt is approximately 33 billion. Most of this debt comes from unfunded retiree benefits promises such as retiree health care and debt pensions. Whoa. Did y'all catch that? Total unfunded debt, 330 billion. I apologize, 330 billion. And most of that unfunded debt are retiree benefits, health care, and pensions. So the blank is about to hit the fan as you have your baby boomers that are starting now to retire in a large numbers. So these cities that have had their pensions a part of their salary packages, and in some cases probably the particular employees had to contribute to their pensions. You mean to tell me they don't even have that funding set aside? Woo! What happens when those cities go bankrupt? You better believe that if that is the largest unfunded debt, they're going to be including retirees' benefits. So meaning pensions and health care in a part of that bankruptcy. So they're either going to do like a reduced form or get rid of it completely. Right? So if you work for these cities and you're near retirement age, you better take that into consideration. All right? And really, really do some management. I don't know, if that means retiring early to get your stuff. Whatever the case may be. Cashing out, I don't know. But it's something you should consider, especially if you are in one of those cities that's essentially they're bankrupt, they're underwater. Okay? All right. Unfortunately, one of the ways cities help make their budgets look balanced is by shortchanging public pension funds. Presently, pension debt accounts for $189 billion, and other post-employment benefits, mainly retiree health care liabilities, is about $139 billion. So Irvine, California, Charlotte, North Carolina, Washington, D.C., Lincoln, Nebraska, and Fresno, California are the cities with the highest level of surplus. Okay. All right. So I'm surprised anything Cali made it on there when it as it relates to surplus. Okay, and then it says for the second year in a row, Irvine has been ranked in the Truth in Accounting's analysis. It has $617 million available in assets to pay $240 million worth of bills. This means that there is a $377 million surplus, which is about $4,400 surplus per taxpayer. However, Irvine is hiding, here we go. Irvine is hiding $3.6 million of retiree healthcare debt from its balance sheet. Wow. Irvine received a B for its state of finances. A B is given to cities with a taxpayer surplus that is between $100 and 10,000. Okay, so that's very interesting. So it appears that all of these cities, they're hiding the cost for the retirees fund. Now, I know some people complain about such a large commitment for retirees when it's concerning the city employees and the state employees. Now, I'm just going to say this, having been a contractor for quite some time now, and from time to time working on city, county, and state contracts, yeah, it is not like they're kicking it up and living. As a matter of fact, if you are a worker, so city and state and county worker, you are not getting top dollar for the job that you are in. Your particular salary is under the market. And that's hence why a lot of professional people will not take a job from those particular agencies because of that. We're talking 10, 20,000 minimum difference in salary. All right. So I'm saying all that to say these folks, they've earned their pensions. They've earned those pensions because for years they have been paid under market value. And it doesn't even matter if it's a new job. It is still under market. All right. So I would hope that particular truth. To listen to this episode in its entirety, go to anchor.fm/WTUZ radio. Again, that's anchor.fm/WTUZ radio. And the link is in the description. Thank you, and peace and love. What?